All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is 6 p.m. Could I have a roll call and establishment of a quorum, please?
Mike Wagner.
Here.
Cindy Biting. Here. Terry Demashki.
Here.
James Cartman.
Here.
Mary Beth Shaw. Here. Matt Crow.
All right, I have proof of posting. Let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are on to 1.5, approval of the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Matt? I'll vote yes as well. We're on to 2.1, approval of the Board of Education meeting minutes from June 8th of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
That was it.
All right, are there any changes or corrections? All right, hearing none. Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. All right, we're on to 3.1, which is public input. Looks like we have lots of people that have signed up. I guess I would just point out, it does say 2 minutes, roughly, for each person. And it looks like Heather Reeder is first on our list.
Do I have to go first? Just because I walked in the room first? I want Lyden to go first.
Don't be shy.
Nobody objects, we will go first.
I would love for you to go first. Yes,
All right, guys, I guess we can do that. I'll just have to make sure I'm checking you off as I
Thank
go, so I
you.
don't skip anybody. All right, Lyden, you want to go first?
My name is Lyden Haas. I am a Black Earth resident. I pay property taxes, and I am an assistant director for the Plaza Musicals here at Wisconsin Heights. Somewhere around October 8th, 2011 is when I started my involvement with this school. I have witnessed all of the concerts involving the bands and choirs. I've attended multiple solo ensembles, honors bands, honors choirs, former students' recitals, marching band shows, and even been involved with the community band and choirs. And just a side note, I've attended 8 graduations. I have seen the talent, I know the kids. I want what is best for them. I also have elementary age children. Corinne will be 1, or Corinne will be in 1st grade, and Blair in 4K, and Garland is 1. I want what's best for them. I have heard metaphors and analogies comparing the idea of the auditorium to impractical purchases. I can appreciate the idea that was trying to be conveyed, but it shows me what's really happening. We are continuing to undervalue the arts and the need for them. The kids involved in the arts are amazing kids, and I don't think anyone would argue that point. I would, however, argue that we sometimes don't know what we don't know. I know who's been to the concerts, I know who's been to the shows, and I know who's reached out to the directors to ask them the importance of this situation. The auditorium is a practical decision. I strongly urge the board to assess what is needed for the school and this community, and at least show this community you are fighting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Now, Heather, do you want to just
Sure,
go?
now Sure.
Okay.
So my name is Heather Reeder, and I live in the village of Black Earth. I have 3 children in the district. Sophie, my oldest, who will be a junior. I have John, who's going into 8th grade, and Charlie, who will be in the middle school in 6th grade this coming year. And I am here also to say that as a taxpayer, as a parent in the district, I want a performing arts center in this school district. I work for the Sauk Prairie School District. I don't expect us to have a River Arts Center necessarily, but I surely would love for us to have a place that is solely for the performing arts that doesn't double as a cafeteria during the day. My sons are much more athletes, and I don't ever have to worry about them not having everything they need to play their sports and perform their best in athletics. But my daughter, I have been choosing her out to Sauk, to be in the orchestra pit for their musical, to march in their marching band. Because, not because the teachers are better, hell no, our teachers are fantastic, but the facilities are better. And I don't want to have to take my kids out of their home environment to go and do something at a caliber that will get them ready to take next steps once they go to college. So, I love working for SOC, but I love living in Wisconsin Heights. And I want what I see where I work, I want some of that for my own kids. So I am all for and asking that we don't squash the idea of a performing arts center, because I feel like if we don't do it now with this referendum, then when the hell would we ever get the opportunity to do it in the near future?
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Tricia Ring is next.
Hi there, I'm Tricia Ray. I'm the mother of 3 kids in this district. My youngest will be a senior this next year. Caitlin is a senior at UW-Madison studying genetics. Mark's on Alex at the U.S. Marine stationed at 29 times. We chose this school district after careful evaluation. Many of you know me. The last time I was up here was to support the referendum and the support of adding 4-year-old kindergarten, and believe that was a very correct decision for this district to make. My husband has had a long career as being the head school psych at Middleton High School, as a dual career in the U.S. military as well. I'm a project manager with years of education behind me, and know that parents do not take lightly where they move for their family. We're in a competitive education environment, like it or not. We are competing, and I think I'm a parent that also chose my school, certain kids out of our district because it wasn't meeting their needs, and that was the right decision for our family. That I'm a full supporter and taxpayer in the Wisconsin Heights School District. The things that I readily know is that parents make decisions for their kids' education as they see fit. What I also can tell you is that I have extensively studied, researched, and also lived out west, where they have different educational opportunities. And I can tell you that we have looked at some of the best boarding schools. We have sent our son to our boarding school. And I will tell you, the schools here and the teachers at Wisconsin Heights are bar none. There is not one school I have looked at that is better staffed and have a solid curriculum than Wisconsin Heights. And I think it's about time we start marketing our school district. I'm in full support of a performing arts center, not only for the education for our students, and which makes it a well-rounded education. It is also a huge attribute to add to this community. And when you are competing against Mount Horeb, SOC, and people are making choices, they will look at this dedication that the community votes for in the referendums and what is included, and they will make decisions to live here. I truly believe this is the case. If you build it, they will come. We know that education is now a business with competing choices. If you don't build it, someone else will, and they will come. Let's support Wisconsin Heights community and schools and continue to make this a strong community environment with our vote and the choices we give our voters. And on a side note, I think the school board, the teachers, the community are missing an opportunity of not readily marketing this school district with glossy ads to attract people out here. Again, I will reiterate, I have studied teachers, curriculum, in depth, and no school district has better teachers than we do, and I am floored that we don't advertise that. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you, Tricia. Andy Zudi?
Ladies and gentlemen of the school board, staff, friends, and fellow citizens, my name is Andy Zudi. I have 3 children who are students in the district. I've been a resident of the district for the vast majority of my life. I was valedictorian of the WHHS class in 1996, which apparently doesn't allow me to say WHHS properly, and I'm a data professional. It is disconcerting to me that the opinion of 58% of respondents to a survey that was only answered by 22% of those eligible is being treated as if it were the majority opinion of the district, especially when it comes to such an important issue. The survey itself had a scarcity of options. If people did not like the choice between $20 million on the 2 elementary schools versus $20 million on a new elementary wing, they were out of luck because there was no third option available. Additionally, the most popular choice in the survey was apparently the auditorium and weight room, and yet those are no longer being considered. In discussing the survey with other respondents, one view of the survey stood out above all others, that it laid bare its biases for all to see. Why did the survey only give the most extreme choices? Why were no intermediate options considered? Before moving forward with a referendum, I would ask that the board consider some of the options that were not presented on the survey. For example, replacing one of the elementary schools with a new combined school in one of the villages. I would also ask the board to reconsider the possibility of building an auditorium, which would be of immense value for our district. Please do not allow mixed results from a flawed survey to unduly shape your facilities planning decisions.
Thank you, Andy. We're on to Andy Bartel.
I'm Andy Bartel. Thanks for inviting and letting us here. Just wanted to pass on support of not just the school district the way it is today, but also where it's headed. Very grateful for the board, for the teachers, leadership, and others getting us to this point, and the parents too that push and get us here. But I'm a very big supporter of the arts too. I'm a little tired of watching them in the cafeteria with limited noise and disruption and visibility, and it's tough. So I think I'm a huge supporter of that. Not necessarily just in building one, but I'd love at least a commitment of some sort to look into what are alternative methods, what are co-opting methods. And I know some of those things have been discussed, just I'm not in the loop on them, which is fine. But something there would be great, and I know the students for sure are encouraging the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Looks like Kylan Bartel is next.
All right, so I didn't really plan anything, but earlier today I was thinking about this meeting, and I was thinking, how are we going to fit all these people in safely with coronavirus? And then I was like, well, wait a minute, if we had an auditorium, we'd have more space to do stuff like this. So that's like definitely a plus. I think Andy Zudi touched on this a little bit, but the survey, the way it was laid out, the auditorium for like the funding part was only included with every single other option. So people who, say for example, didn't want a one-site campus wouldn't be able to vote for the auditorium. So that kind of skews the results. And I think you guys should definitely reconsider that survey and possibly make an option having the auditorium by itself as a financial question. Like, would you support, what was it, $7.5 million for an auditorium instead of looping it in with everything else? So yeah, I guess that's what I have to say. I would really love there to be an auditorium. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're on to Gwyneth Childs.
Hello, my name is Gwyneth Childs. I'm secretary for the drama club. I'm a student here, and I think that it's very important that we have students talk, because I know last time when we discussed the auditorium, we didn't really have students talking. Because we're the ones mainly affected by this, it would be added onto our school. It's very important that we have students at these meetings. And unfortunately, not a lot came last time. But for all of us, an auditorium would greatly benefit the school, because not only does it add an area for the community to work and practice at their own things and have their own activities, but it also offers theatrical classes to the school. A lot of schools in our area have theatrical classes, and unfortunately, we do not. All we have is choir and band, and that's about it. We have an after-school drama program, but even that is limited by our audience capacity. We repeatedly sell out to shows, but we don't have room to hold all of those people. We've had to add extra chairs, we don't have room for our pit. For adding an auditorium, that would make room for those shows not to be sold out anymore. The drama program pays for all of its own props. It only has funding for the schools to pay people like Leiden and Ms. Haas who work there. However, paying for the school and auditorium goes to the community. The drama program does not ask for much, but it's asking for this thing that would greatly benefit the community. So giving us this is kind of an important step in showing how the school and the community supports the arts.
Thank you.
All right, We're on to Emily Weitzel.
My name is Emily, and I'm the stage crew officer for Drama Club. And one of our biggest problems is not having space to put all of our props and equipment, especially our big sets. So an auditorium would have allow us more space to put our sets, build better sets maybe. And also when there's cast members up on stage in the wings, there's not room for us to push our props out and our sets on stage because they're all crowded in this little space. So an auditorium would be better for that too. And that's all.
All right, well, thank you very much. Dana G.
My name is Dana G. I live in the town of Barry, the Wisconsin Heights School District. I didn't plan anything necessarily, but hearing other people, I think I jump on board with, my kids are not sports kids, but I really found, well, first of all, I had thought about taking them to the school district a long time ago, but I really love the Wisconsin Heights area. The teachers are excellent. The community is above and beyond, if you ask me, the involvement that people get. So I stayed here and make the best of, I guess, what we have. I've been getting involved over the years with Wisconsin Heights Players Theater, which I took over several years back. I'm a volunteer coordinator of that. And all three of my kids were involved in theater through Wisconsin Heights Players, through Wisconsin Heights High School. The boys were also involved in band and choir, and so I'm on the same page as others too. I feel sports always get a new field or a new scoreboard, or new, they always have what they need, and I'm not sure where that money all comes from, but I see that the kids who are involved in the arts, it becomes their family, which I think all high school kids need some kind of support group behind them, or they start going ways that we don't want them to go. So when my boys, and I'm sorry to embarrass him, but if he lived in the basement playing video games forever, once he found, the theater and band and so forth, that was his group of people, and he felt like he fit in. But as far as Wisconsin Heights Players, I know we use the community building, and I don't know if the school would allow it, but a group such as ours would totally be interested in something newer and better. I have kids and adults alike who deal with allergy and asthma problems. There's something in that building, and we've had them test it, and we're not really sure, but things are old there as well, that maybe it could be something we could rent from the school as well and all utilize things. I know we already share some props and other equipment, so to share some of the space. Wisconsin Heights Players has also grown in the recent years since I took over. We started with a children's group that is 3rd through 8th graders. Then we added a middle school, high school group because the kids wanted to continue. And then all of a sudden we have an adult group. So sometimes we have multiple groups that want to be doing something at the same time, so to have another option for us would be great as well. So I support it on behalf of the kids who go to school here, so they have the opportunity to have their performances and practices. But I also say that Wisconsin Heights Players would love to help support it if we could rent it in the future.
Thank you. We're on to Emma Schaefer.
Hi, I'm Emma Schaefer. I am a senior here at Heights, the public relations officer for the drama club. And I have been involved in every show that the drama club has put on since I started high school. And I'm here to talk about something that's close to my heart, family. The first show I performed in was Mary Poppins. It was super exciting for me because in the Wisconsin Heights Drama Club, I didn't just find friends or community, I found family. Every group of people that I have ever done a show with, from the class of 2018 all the way up to the class of 2024, so this past year's freshmen, is family to me. All of the people who have helped or directed the shows in any way, like Lyden, Ms. Haas, everyone is all family. The people of the Wisconsin Heights Drama Club are my family, and I would take a 2-inch splinter for any of them. Allow me to explain. So the stage that we perform on currently is original to the school, built in 1965. The district claims to maintain our stage by refinishing the floors every couple of years, but I promise you, this is not enough. In last year's play, The Complete History of America Abridged, we had many scenes where actors fell on the stage. During one of our performances, a show, Cody Angle fell as he was supposed to during a scene during Act 1 and was impaled, literally. When I said I would take a 2-inch splinter for any of the members in the drama club, Cody actually did. It was about this big during the show. He insisted on finishing the show with a piece of wood in his body, and after vows that day, he went to the emergency room. This incident points to just how desperately we need a new place to perform. The stage is 55 years old and is unsafe for our drama club. Could you imagine something like that happening to a member of your family during a football game or a soccer game? A piece of wood on the field, I feel like probably wouldn't happen because our fields are so well taken care of. So I don't want to see any other members of our drama club family getting hurt like that ever again in a performance or a rehearsal at all. So I ask you all to please reconsider including a safer place for us to perform in the facilities plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we're on to Kyle Schaefer.
I'm going to take this off so everyone can hear me. My name's Kyle Schaefer. You just heard from my oldest daughter, Emma. We've been part of the Wisconsin Heights district area for approaching 5 years now, since we moved here. Prior to that, we lived in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I grew up in Kaukauna. Kaukauna has a very strong drama program. Growing up, the high school that I attended was almost 100 years old, as was the auditorium. It was finally refinished once in its lifetime when I was a freshman. Prior to that, they had been building a new middle school when my mother was approaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. At that time, they talked about building a new auditorium. That got thrown on the side. Then they said, well, let's renovate the new auditorium we have. That too got squashed by the school district. It took them almost 40 years after that initial referendum to finally come around to fixing and upgrading that auditorium. After I graduated, I had 2 younger brothers that followed me. When the youngest finally graduated, we had a new high school that was built on the other side of town. That high school had a brand new state-of-the-art auditorium put in it. Part of the reason why I'm bringing this up is auditoriums and drama programs and arts programs are part of the educational experience for these kids. It exposes them to much more than just, I know the big focus now is STEM. I'm a STEM person myself. I work in technology at the hospital. But to produce well-rounded students, we have to have arts in the schools. Part of that educational experience is being able to offer it not just to the high school kids, whether it's a combined campus or not. We didn't have a combined campus in Kaukauna either. But when the drama program would put on a play or a musical or any other event like that, we actually had the elementary and middle schools would bus kids in to see dress rehearsals that we would put on in the school. With our current setup here, that's impossible. That's a cafeteria, it's a gymnasium, and an auditorium, if you can call it that. The acoustics in there are horrible, not only for the music that's being played in the pit, which is phenomenal. We have incredibly talented people that play the music for our stuff. Lyden and his wife do an excellent job directing these programs. We have very talented students on the stage producing very high caliber and high quality shows for us. And we can't even get everyone in to see all of these because they run out of space. A new auditorium would allow them both that space, and I know there's a lot of people that say that this is, it is an expense. But when you have a civic auditorium like that, whether it's located at a school or not, you have the ability to then turn that into something that produces revenue as well for renting it out. So there are plenty of ways to help offset this cost for this auditorium, just like with if they were to do a new weight room. If you had a gym membership or something that was charged for you can offset those costs as well. You know, it's been said before, but a lot of the sports programs don't have any problems in any of the schools really getting that. There's a huge backing, it's part of the culture of the United States, and especially here in Wisconsin, football and other programs as well. I know that firsthand. I'm also a soccer referee. I referee high school, I referee college, I referee all the way down into the youth programs as well. But the arts is something that we have to hold on to. They've been getting funding cut repeatedly, not only from the state level, from the federal level. If we start cutting it at the local level, there's going to be nothing left. And if there's nothing left, I hate to see what that's going to bring to our society and our future generations. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Now on to Leona Schaefer.
Hello everyone, I'm Leona Schaefer. Kyle is my husband, Emma is my daughter, and I have another daughter who will be a sophomore this year here at Wisconsin Heights High School. And I'm speaking in support of a plan for either a new auditorium or renovations of an existing space for an auditorium. As you've heard, the school district has an excellent music and drama program, and I strongly recommend that the district provide an environment for all to be included for the many programs that are offered, such as the concerts, the plays, the musicals, also graduation, school board meetings, and community events. The current setup in the area that has been coined a Gimo cafeterium and the stuff room and the North Gym is an extremely difficult hearing environment for me because I have a hearing impairment. And also for 20% of older adults who are attending Wisconsin Heights events. An auditorium with appropriate sound and lighting technology will allow the district to provide important accommodations that the community needs in order to participate fully. Currently, the school employees are setting up and taking down a hearing loop for every event that the hearing loop is requested at, moving that equipment from room to room. An auditorium would have the necessary equipment in place permanently. A renovated stage with updated sound and lighting would also provide a modern learning environment to students in the technology and arts programs. In the facilities plan on the website, it is the goal of the district to modernize the learning environment, and that includes the ability for all who are present to be able to hear what is being presented. I would like to touch again on Kyle's comments about an auditorium being a revenue-generating source for the school district, not only for the district's performances, but for churches, Christmas programs, dance studios, and other outside community organizations that want to hold events in a larger space. Please consider making auditorium part of the future plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Leona. All right, well, that concludes everybody that signed up for public comment, and I know that it will require you guys to stick around and spend a little bit more of your personal time. If you can wait until we get to the discussion where we talk about the survey results and some of our listening session feedback, that would probably be beneficial to you guys as well. So if you guys do stick around, I think it will be worth your time. Okay? We'll move on to district business personnel. I will look to combine 4.1 through 4.10.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth? Matt? And I'll vote yes as well. We're on to 5.1, action to approve the updated health procedures.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion about these, or is there any charges you want to comment on?
Yeah. So we have a full day of administrative planning scheduled for this Wednesday. Today there was an 87-page guidance document released by the Department of Public Instruction, which I just made it through reading before I came in here. Had a lot of highlights in that 87-page document. There was also a Zoom meeting that was attended by superintendents, public health, DPI staff members this afternoon that had 795 participants statewide, talking about that 87-page document. Based on that immediate feedback, the DPI said they would be making updates this week. Point of that is the situation remains very fluid, and the updates and changes and the implications for us and all school districts across the state of Wisconsin will continue to be something that we'll have to address on a day-to-day basis. So, as I said earlier, we have a full day of planning scheduled for the 24th. Really, the first key part of that is to reflect on the end of this school year, to talk about how that went in ways we know we can improve based on feedback that we've received from students, parents, and staff members. And then the afternoon, that is to transition towards really looking at the 3 models that we're being advised that are going to be feasible models for instruction next school year, and to start that planning process with full acknowledgement that that'll continue to evolve during the month of July and probably into the start of August. Did send out a parent and staff letter via Skyward Messenger at the end of the day, sent that to staff members via email as well, just to kind of keep them up to date so they're aware of kind of what transpired today. And then really for us, the next key step after our planning, initial planning on Wednesday, is to then survey staff and parents early in July. There will be questions to parents and to staff members about pre-existing conditions or things like that, and their comfort or their ability to return to a traditional school setting, which for some people they seem very adamant that they want things to be back to normal, and for others that creates a lot of apprehension. So just so the board is aware, and obviously everyone in attendance, it's a situation that will continue to evolve. We'll do our best to plan and communicate, and really that's, I guess, about all there is to say. These 6 procedures are things that we need to have in place as per Dane County Public Health. We would like the possibility, if able, in July to resume some sort of small group instruction, and we need to have these things in place to do some of that during our summer school program, so that's why we're getting them in front of you now for approval, and you will probably see them over and over as things continue to evolve. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. These were reviewed by public health officials in the county. Most of the school districts in Dane County have kind of collaborated on these documents. We've been having weekly meetings to kind of talk over what everyone's doing. So I don't know if there's any other questions for now.
What kind of posting, Jordan, comes with all this? I mean, is there boilerplate standard posting for some of these things as well?
Some of it, yes. The other piece is just really the acknowledgement of receipt of the information and some sort of training with staff members. So there's a program called Safe Schools that we use for a lot of our other state mandated training. So Mr. Matt Green was working in Safe Schools and then working with Bev to make sure that we had the proper trainings embedded into Safe Schools, and that'll get pushed out to staff members who will then have to kind of go through these modules and take a quiz and just basically say that they went through the training and they're aware of the procedures or policies. I mean, really, with summer school, the possibility of being able to legally do things as per the state order. As of July 6th, I mean, we're approaching go time, and that'll be a situation to kind of test some of these solutions and what does it look like to socially distance in a classroom, to try to encourage people to wear masks if needed, if they can't socially distance, entrance, exit. I mean, there's so many things that once you dig into it are involved in the process.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions? All right, well, I just want to say thank you, Jordan, and the admin staff. I mean, we're talking about pretty much an impossible task with all the scenarios at play and all the stuff you guys are doing, and certainly not what you would be doing in a normal summer. So thank you for your time and your efforts and your communication. All right, so let's move on to our vote. Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. All right, we're on to 6.1, which is action to approve the 2020-2021 employee handbook.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 employee handbook.
Second.
Mary Beth?
Okay, does anybody have any questions or discussion? I think this was brought up once before already, and these are just, we're bringing them around for approval this time. Okay. Jordan, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I mean, we had it on the last discussion focused agenda along with the synopsis of updates, primary editorial in nature. Things come up, we have to add verbiage, change verbiage, make things more clear. That's really what most of it is.
Okay, well, hearing no other discussion, we'll move on. Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. We're on to 7.1, which is action to approve and denial of an open enrollment applications.
I'll make that motion.
Do we want to clarify denying 0?
Okay, well, can go in there. So it looks like, are we just looking at the 2020, 2021, you're looking at the ins and outs, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so denying none for open and 1.
Yeah, so the approval and denial will be based on the document,
Yeah.
and that would be the recommendation is 0 in the one case and then the one situation with the denial due to statutes around habitual truths.
I'll second.
And Jordan, just to clarify, when looking at the chart, the top portion refers to just this year and the bottom is overall?
Correct.
Is that the way I'm reading it?
Correct, so just this year, I mean, after school boards approve the ins or the outs, then there will be notification letters sent to families, and then families need to make the decision whether
Right.
they're gonna go through with it or not.
Breakdown as to grade?
Primarily new to district students, again, lower grades,
Yeah,
not students that have been attending our school
Okay.
district or opted to then leave the district. It's people that have either never attended or who haven't been in school yet.
right.
I just had a question just to verify. I apologize, I didn't look at it myself, but I know you know policy so much, Jordan. The truancy, we do have that language in our current policy.
We do, yep, so we reviewed that. Tammy Schaefer, our registrar, she's very astute with all things open enrollment, so she made sure that we reviewed our policies ahead of time, and yes, our policies cover those items.
Any other questions?
Who made the motion?
Mike.
Mike, okay.
Mike and then Cindy was second. All right, hearing no other discussion, Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. We're on to 7.2, which is action for the approval of the student handbooks for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Can I just say the cover on the elementary is just a killer? Who, you gonna take credit for that, Dale? Scott?
I give it to Scott.
Scott.
Nice.
Yeah, no problem.
Nice. That's just, I wanna read that document.
It's very inviting.
It looks really great. Not to take fire away from Liz at all, but,
I just can't compete, I know.
no. No, well done. They read well.
All right, does anybody have any questions or any further discussion for the handbooks? Hearing none, Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. All right, now we are on to facility planning 8.1, which is spring community survey results.
Yeah, well, the survey was certainly referenced, a few of the statements that individuals have made tonight, was referenced a few times in the feedback listening sessions that we had. Even though it seems like an eternity has passed, it's been 2 months, so sometimes when it feels like an eternity has passed, it's going to be a quick refresher. So I talked to Sue Peterson, and I'm going to move as I go so this doesn't fall asleep right when I don't want it to. Sue, who works for School Perceptions, and was a part of supporting the district both last year when we did a survey and then this year. Put together a little video and sent it to me the other day just to kind of go through things. So what I'm going to do, if it's okay, is Board members, I will stay over here as this plays. If there's something that you would like me to pause, because she does move relatively quick, it's an annotated video. Gary was just playing it right there. So,
So,
Can you all see that?
so Jordan, before you start, so, school perceptions, they're a company that school districts can hire. Do you just want to give a little bit of a background, exactly like how they work and I guess how many school districts they've typically done surveys for?
yeah, so this is what they do is surveys for communities, school districts. They do both things regarding referendum. They'll do exit interview type things, staff satisfaction, engagement type surveys as well. So this is their business, this is the work that they engage in. They had done a survey for our district last year in advance of the operational referendum. And at that time, we were actually going to survey both things relative to operations and to facilities. But the timing was not good at that time because we were coming off the flood. Unfortunately, this time it wasn't great either as we were coming in the midst of a global pandemic. So we decided that we may never get a good time, so we just did the survey anyways. So that's a little bit of context, but I mean, school perceptions literally works with hundreds of school districts per year. They're not like a little mom and pop shop that just we found a way to work with. So I think that's enough context. They're a reputable firm that works with school districts throughout the country, not just Wisconsin. So I'm going to play the annotated video from Sue, and then like I said, if board members want me to pause or to stop, let me know because she does go relatively quick.
Good evening. This is Sue Peterson, your consultant from School Perceptions that worked with you this spring on your community survey project. I apologize I'm not able to be with you live tonight, but I did want to revisit the results of your community survey as you continue conversations for next step in your referendum. I want to just remind you of the number of folks that responded to your survey. So your survey results were very representative of your community, and you did have an above average participation rate of 28%. As you recall, the survey really asked folks initially that we needed to solve your elementary school needs problem. And we gave folks two options. One was to invest in those existing schools. The other was to move to that one campus district. And your citizens overwhelmingly supported the idea of moving to one campus. And so closing those two existing elementary schools. In addition,
So I just want to pause right here because, like I said, she does go quick. So the far left is when people were asked about updating two elementary schools. The middle was the possibility of becoming a one-campus district. The far right was undecided or needed more information. I'm just going to do this real quick, see if I can get this. So the bottom that you can't see very well is talking about all respondents, staff, parents, non-staff. So she'll say it later that the purple is non-parents, non-staff. And when they talk about the results, they talk a lot about that group because non-parents and non-staff is the largest voting group in your community. We would like to think that, like as educators or even as parents, that we would be representative of that, but the facts are we're not. The retired population, for the most part, make up the greatest portion of the voting community. So when you look at the results, it's just important to consider that context as well.
to asking about some middle school updates, we also asked about additional projects of that weight and fitness center and perhaps adding a $7.5 million auditorium. When we asked the question specific to the auditorium on the survey, you can see that 42% of your citizens said, yes, it's something that the district should explore.
So obviously that's on the left side. The group there on the left with the yes, The purple, once again, is the non-parents, non-staff residents of the community, so that's what she's reporting right now. The blue one is all residents, the red is the staff, the green is parents, and then the purple is non-parents, non-staff.
And then we next ask the question of when. And I think this is important as you consider your decision moving forward, that 30% of those general citizens said, not necessarily right away, but perhaps within the next 2 to 5 years. I'm focusing on those purple people, those non-parent, non-staff, because they make up the majority of the folks at the polls. Similarly, you can see that your staff and parents are sitting at about 39%, so that leaning across all groups is really 2 to 5 years, and not necessarily immediately. So I think that's another piece of information you need to consider. And then finally, it does all come down to money. So we introduced the option of a 21, 22, 27, or that $37 million capital referendum, and we let folks know what that tax impact would be. Your community's tax tolerance was really closer to that $22 million mark than it was to the $27 million mark, which would include adding some of those middle school updates. So if we said, all right, can we get a $27 million project, we knew it was going to be tight. You've got about 48% support. So I think don't lose sight of the fact that the $27 million project is going to be work if you indeed included all of that in one question. I believe in my conversations with you initially, we perhaps explored the idea of a 2-question ballot. One, to look at just addressing your elementary school needs, and perhaps a second question with that middle school project, reducing some of those middle school project costs perhaps, or delaying some of those might decrease your overall project cost. I think it's important to be sensitive to where the current economy is at, and where people are at now. And can you get a $27 million project? Yes, but it's going to be close. So now when I know that there's conversation about what about the auditorium, I just leave you with a couple of thoughts. A $37 million project, you've only got 20% support from your general citizens. So 20% support from that group and 45.
So this chart's really confusing if you haven't looked at it like 25 times. So what Sue is referring to right now is the top group, the non-parents, non-staff, and then when people were asked about their tolerance in terms of a referendum and an investment, so the blue is the $37 million level. So from this group, which makes up the largest group of voters, at $37 million, 20% of that group said yes. So if you just go right down the line, parent residents. So most of the parents, I would say, in the room tonight would fall under this category. So parent residents in that group, 45% of that group said they would support a $37 million referendum. Staff residents was actually lower at 36, and then all residents, when you pull everybody in, including staff, non-staff, it puts it at 32%. So then you can just see when she talked about the other one, the $22 million being the number that she thought would be the best number, if you would, or the most likely to pass in a referendum. Well, then you just pull those blocks together. So the non-parent, non-staff, 20% would support 37 million, another 23%, and then you pull in an additional 15% into that group. So that might not have been the greatest explanation, but hopefully it was enough to at least understand it a little bit more, because if you haven't looked at it much, this chart can be confusing.
Support from So some options could be to add a second question that's about the auditorium. The other option is to acknowledge that this doesn't mean never, but perhaps we take care of our facility projects and your elementary projects. You realize some of those operational efficiencies and then look to explore an auditorium in the not-so-distant future, which is really what the data kind of lent us to where your citizens were at. I would tell you to look at districts like Dodgeville, who did something very similar. They definitely had a citizens group that was curious and interested in an auditorium, but when we looked at that tax threshold, they, like you, just weren't there yet. And so they worked on those immediate needs, they realized some efficiencies, and then within a short amount of time, they went back to tackle those next projects. Again, I just remind you to remember the data as you move forward. The data is highly, highly predictive, and so remember that this is representative of all of your citizens, so important to continue to focus on and consider the data. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at School Perceptions. Thanks.
All right, well, I think she summed it up pretty well, and just so you guys know, this is not a personal choice amongst the board members. We're just going by the data and by what we think is gonna pass if we put a question on a ballot. So just so you guys know, it's not personal at all. I can tell you I was in plays in high school. My sisters were all in band. I would love to have an auditorium too. And I'm not saying we're not going to entertain that option, but I'm just saying we have to go by the data that's presented to us. Okay. Jordan, do you have anything else under the survey results, or do you want to move on to our listening session feedback?
No, I don't necessarily have anything to share. And, I guess the piece that I'll just kind of leave the board and then the visitors that we have, because it's nice to have visitors. Just like any decision that we make, even when we look at students or we look at the health of our academic programs, it's not one thing that necessarily drives everything. You look at a multitude of factors. So if we look at a student's success, you have things like their grades in classes. You have things like their participation in co-curricular activities and the arts. You have things like how they perform on exams like the ACT. And when you take things in totality and look at a multitude of factors, well, that's how you start to make important decisions, and that influences the way you kind of proceed and move forward. So I'm just trying to provide that setting because in this situation, at least to me, and ultimately, yes, this is the board's decision, but I mean, to me, it's the weighing of a multitude of factors and looking at how can we make the best decision possible, knowing that it's never going to be perfect, but we're just trying to make the best decision possible. And I mean, to the point that Leiden made about the analogy, I'm just trying to provide context because I'm a parent too. I have 3 kids in the district. I'm a taxpayer too. I'm an educator. You will never find a more staunch proponent for public education. However, as I look at the multitude of factors, one of which is the information that we did receive from 729 people who took the time to complete the survey, was that information. So I do feel it would be disingenuous of me to just ignore that, and for us to ignore that information. And then I guess the other piece is being in the district's buildings for 3 years and in all of the buildings and in all of the classrooms, And parents, kids, you know this, I mean, there are a lot of needs. And need probably isn't a strong enough word, like, there are a lot of things that just have to happen. So for us, the balancing act and the multitude of factors is how do we balance all of those things and try to take care of what we believe we need for like day-to-day operations to just provide a safe and healthy environment for kids and staff, period. So it is not about picking sides or anything else. If I was king for the day, we'd do it all and it would move on and we'd all smile and slap each other in the back. But that's not how it works. So it's a matter of trying to figure out the best way possible to check the most boxes possible and to do something that we think is feasible. So it is to share that perspective, because that's to me what it's about.
The questions on the ballot, do they have to be independent of one another? Or can one say omit the auditorium and the second, combine them? Do they have to be totally independent, or can it be this or this? And obviously, if people choose no to both, that's neither.
Yeah, so what I think you're getting at is could there be a question that specifically spoke to the auditorium, but then maybe...
No, what I think, and from my seat here, as we're in the hat of a board member, not a parent, and not getting emotional about being a Black Earth resident or kind of all those other variables is, we can't ignore the needs of our facilities, just day-to-day needs. We can't have our children under leaky roofs, and we need air conditioning, and we need those things. So at the risk of getting this large, expansive auditorium and not being able to provide those necessary needs for our kids, that's not, as me as a board member, I can't vote saying that that is the best choice. So could you have, whichever way we decide with the elementary schools and the updates as one choice, but kind of saying those have to go with the auditorium. You get what I mean?
I do, and
So
that's
people
why I
have
was
a,
getting
okay,
at.
so people have an option to not vote, but if it passes, it has to pass with the updates too.
So people that vote yes for the building have the option to vote yes for the auditorium. Is that kind of what I'm understanding?
So like option A would be
Yep.
school updates, however we decide
Yep.
what those are. Option B would be school updates with
Along with that.
auditorium.
So that would be a Quarles and Brady question, and that's the attorneys that put together the board resolutions. Because I had that exact conversation with Doreen last week after the listening sessions were over, was how could that possibly be crafted if that was something that the board decided to do. So that's already on the list of questions and things to clarify as we look forward to our future discussions as a board. But yeah, so I can't answer that in confidence right now. I'm not going to go over them. But that definitely would be something we could consider.
All right, any other discussion about the survey results?
Are we allowed to interject at all?
That's your call, Mr. President, don't look at me. It's your meeting,
I don't
not
have a
mine.
problem with it, we just can't make this go on for hours and hours, but we of course respect that you guys all being here and.
I can take notes and come back next time.
Well, I mean, if,
You have questions?
Yeah.
Comments?
Confusions,
okay.
but
If anything,
I could benefit from time away to kind of gather the thoughts and.
I was gonna say, if anything, questions are great because we can ponder and come back, so those are always.
Yes, Heather?
I would just like to share, since you said briefly, right? Being a member of South Prairie School District staff, I'm looking at the presentation that School Perceptions did to SOC on November 18th. As you know, hopefully you know, we passed a $65 million referendum with a promise to dig once for the future of all kids in South Prairie School District. And I'm looking at the slide that says, would you support a $65 million referendum for the proposed facilities improvement plan? And it says non-parent residents, non-staff. And they had a 48% no on that slide. And that community passed it. So I don't want us to just go, well, it's saying, the voters are probably gonna go no. Who gives a crap? Let's dig once in Wisconsin Heights. Let's do something. Because trying to dig twice is gonna be even harder.
And if they all vote no, then we know.
And if they go no, fine. But you know what? I would rather do what Sauk did and go big or go home than piecemeal stuff. We do need air conditioning. We do need roofs. But shit, you need people to want to come here. And Sauk is going to outshine us constantly. Mount Horeb is going to outshine us. They're going to keep outshining us. Ooh, I'm getting all emotional. Try not to. I want this kid to have the best stuff here. I already said that, and I'll just say it again. And if we were to look at our top 10 students every school year, the amount of arts those kids are in is insane. So our best and brightest at Wisconsin Heights keep getting the shittiest accommodations for what they're good at. And I don't want that anymore. I knew I had more to say.
So I went to Sauk for 1 year of my life, and what brought us back was the small community. But something that kept us going to Sauk was the facilities and the teachers and the big environment that always did the best for its students. I remember going in that auditorium and I thought, wow, this is beautiful. When I was talking to my parents recently, they said that the auditorium hasn't changed since my siblings who are 10 years older went to school. In our auditorium, we have a big leaky roof ahead. So if you're worried about leaky facilities, there it is. One of our students fell off the stage because we did not have enough space. He fell off and he still continued with the show. Cody Amble got a large splinter impaled in him, and he continued on with the show. He is in our top 10 students. Most of those students are in National Honor Society. Our drama students are people that are here are not getting great facilities, and we're asking for something because we have been paying for props and all of these things for our entire lives. And in my 4 years in drama, I have not seen one thing that says the school really, really supports drama. Our arts are continuing to get these facilities that aren't great and that are getting worse by the years. And refurnishing the floors is not going to change anything. Patching up the roof on the hole on the roof with like a little piece of plastic or glass or whatever's up there does not do much because we get the wind and the rain all day. So if you're worried about leaky roofs and facilities that are dangerous to our students, our cafeteria and gymnasium is that. The sports teams store stuff on our stage. We have asked repeatedly for them not to, and they continue to, because they don't have a lot of room there, which makes sense. But we don't have a lot of room in our drama program.
Thanks. Sorry.
I actually have a question. So for people who are completing the referendum, is that just voting age people or only taxpayers or like only one per household? Like what is the voter group?
The survey.
No, for the actual referendum.
Oh, no, it'll only be people that
Legal
are
voters.
Okay, so when I'm looking at the survey results, only 1% of the respondents are between the ages of 18 and 25. I don't know if that's just because young people don't like surveys or if it wasn't marketed to young people, I'm not sure. But I think that could definitely play a factor because I'll be a voter. I will definitely be voting yes for the auditorium, and I know these people, many of them are 18 already or will be 18, and we will for sure be voting. Also, when I was looking at the survey, I mentioned this earlier, but 54% of all residents, which are all voters, said that they would approve an auditorium, and then later on in the financial section, yes, it appears to be that people don't support that, but that's also because the auditorium was only included with this $37 million thing, which doesn't necessarily have to be true. Like, maybe people would rather have an auditorium than middle high school infrastructure updates. Personally, I would like all of it to happen, but I'm not everyone. Everyone might have different opinions. And like I said, for people who want to keep the 2 elementary schools, which was, I believe, a good chunk of the people, maybe they would support an auditorium as well, but they weren't able to show that in the survey. So I think you guys should really reconsider the data that you guys think is important, and I think is important too. I think the data could be flawed or skewed in one way or the other. Thanks.
So my experience was, I was astonished at how awesome these numbers were from the previous referendum that Wisconsin Heights put out. I was blown away. These are incredible numbers, people. 28%.
Stock only had
participation.
23, I just
Yeah.
want to say, so I
So-
had 23.
So 20.
We're better.
28% participation is unbelievable. I do agree too, that I do think the data is skewed, because I think it was one survey per household. It didn't go to the students that were gonna be 18. I honestly think that the school plus the auditorium will pass. That is my gut instinct. And again, school board, teachers, staff, and residents, where are we boasting our community? It's a diamond in the rough, people. I'm not kidding. I drove 8 hours down to a top-notch boarding school in Indiana and strongly considered a child there. The reason why we didn't send her, because it was $50,000 a year and the teachers were not up against they didn't hold a candle to you guys. Our science program, when my child comes home and starts talking virology prior to a pandemic, when I have a successful student in the genetics program that is the #1 genetics program in our nation and something like the top 15th in the world, she got her education here. You guys all need to be incredibly proud of your staff. And I also think this community will support the arts. They know top-performing students are involved with arts. And I beg you to include, as Mrs. Stotts said here, to include the schools as one option and an auditorium as another, because I believe it will pass.
Just one last context thing I want to provide to Heather. Never mind. Numbers, sir. So you talked about SOC.
Yeah.
So for context financially, and I just go back and y'all that talked about it is data, and numbers and finance are part of data. So for SOC's referendum, even though the total number is much more significant, their mill rate impact for the entire referendum, and this is according to WisconsinNews.com article about the $64.9 million referendum, the total tax impact of that was 76 cents on the mill rate. And we're going for 2.5. So when we talk about, even at the $21 million, which, say what you want about the survey or about the projects, $21 million would be remodeling or updating the elementary schools, the existing schools, that would be it. The tax increase on that is 150 or 1.5, so roughly double. When we get up to, yes, the $37 million, the tax impact is $250, $2.50, $250 per $100,000 of property. So I just share that because, once again, when I talk about a multitude of factors, part of the multitude of factors is a tax impact that's 3.5 times what their referendum was. So 65 million in context for us is a much different amount.
If the population grows, say in 10 years, will that in 10 years have would it lessen the impact of this referendum?
It does. So the mill rate, think about it as a huge pie. So the pie is all the property value in a school district. So in our case, it's like $680 million of property value in Wisconsin Heights. The more people that build homes, the more businesses that are built. Well, now more and more people start to fill in that pie. So as that happens, our roles as individual taxpayers, that mill rate actually goes down, and the dollar amount becomes slightly less for us as individuals because there's more people helping fill the pie. So yes, conceivably, could that happen? It could.
Yeah, we hope for growth. I mean, if you see somebody that's looking at a house, go over and give them a can of soda or something.
We're not below bribery? Let's do it.
Sophie?
I think something that just maybe hasn't been considered is that since the survey was conducted, quarantine continued on, and a lot of people turned to the arts. And so I think since then, the appreciation for what we're trying to do here has grown a lot, and then more people would be willing to vote for it, especially because it's a gathering space, and I think that's something that people are really looking forward to now.
My final spout off is going to be this. Can we only afford 22 million? Does it look like we could afford 27 million? Do we fight for the 27 million? And is there a way to get everything we need done in $27 million or $22 million? I think the answer lies in building just an auditorium. Don't need the community center. Everybody knows how well Snap Fitness memberships work out. And then reducing what we do on the elementary schools. I think that's my big grand idea of how to make it all work.
Dana, yes.
I was just thinking, I don't remember who said it, but it made me think of, yeah, I filled out the survey, like on behalf of our family, and I have 4 voters in my family who would have probably voted for an auditorium because they're all supporters, so I just thought that part was kind of interesting too, that they'll all go vote. So that could be
I
awesome.
don't want to be the nitpicker here, but it did say very clearly in the survey that they request additional copies.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just, to be honest, I'm not a survey lover either, so it's like, okay, I feel obligated, I'll quick do this. I probably didn't bring it up to anybody else. I'm just saying, yeah, my bad, but.
I had a couple of things on behalf of the board. I was in the high school musical, I was in athletics. I felt like my school also heralded athletics over the arts, and I think that's relatively typical, I guess, and I don't abide by that, but I am very strongly in favor myself of an auditorium. I was in FFA, Parley Pro, mock trial, all kinds of things that were up on the stage. We incorporated our elementary school kids into our high school musicals to fill bodies, to be munchkins in the Wizard of Oz, whatever. But I think what a lot of us are grappling with as the board are those statistics that we saw, and you bring up what SOC statistics are. We have a very savvy audience. I also want to applaud the young man in the back for his identification of the young people survey respondents. One of the things we were even looking at, besides what to put on the referendum, is the timing of the referendum. One of the things that one of our other consultants had brought up is when you run it during a presidential election, you get a lot of young people turnout that's very supportive generally of an election. So one of the attractive reasons to try to run it in the fall would be because of that aspect. You're getting a lot of young voters that are positive towards your school district. But is the auditorium, from the cost of it total, going to weigh it down in the margins? And this is what I would say, is I think our school board is not anti-auditorium, but we're pro-running a candidate, if you will, as a referendum that's going to hold muster in the election, whenever that is. And I think the most important people for whatever we put out there to make that happen is you guys. And so whatever we end up doing at the end of the number of weeks ahead of us, as we mull through this, the most important aspect of whether that's likely to pass or isn't going to pass is the enthusiasm, and not having an enthusiasm gap behind it. So whatever we decide to do, and if we go out on a limb a little bit and say we're going to run some auditorium options, I would say we need the auditorium booster club out there on social media and whatever is acceptable now. We're canvassing the area if we would go out on those limbs. So I felt like I needed to say, like, I got the sense on one of the listening sessions I was on that the school board was maybe anti-auditorium. That's not the case at all. We just are pro coming up with a product that we put out there that's going to hold muster at the ballot box. That's all I guess.
So you get everyone out to vote, and they'll take a bigger risk. Right.
I think I mean, if you know, I mean, we still have to formulate what our different ways of parsing it on the ballot are. I mean, you don't want it to be this vast choose-your-own-adventure ballot that's confusing to people. You know, you guys are saying the survey was confusing. If we have a bunch of legalese on a ballot that nobody can digest, you know, we're not selling the referendum to you guys. You guys are very pro-school district. You guys are obviously the people that would vote for probably whatever option improved the school district out there. But we're looking at the purple people on the survey, and so we have to make sure we make it understandable and palatable to the purple people, because those are your voters that make or break the election. Just one last thing, my dad was a high school principal, school very much like Wisconsin Heights, same makeup. I would totally agree with you that we undervalue our rural public schools and how valuable they are to us. My school district made me everything I am today, the musicals, the extracurricular activities that I could participate in because I wasn't squeezed out of them or cut. But my district had a referendum on this last year. My mom and dad moved out of the district because my dad had Parkinson's. It lost by 2 votes on the ballot. And then when they got the mail-in votes, then it won by 1. So my dad was sweating it that their 2 votes moving out of the ballot cost them the election. Still very loyal to the school district. But you're looking at margins here that you have to overcome. And those margins are not the pro-school people here. Those margins are the purple people. You have to get it on the horn and convince those purple people, whatever we do.
Well, the purple people were 42 to 41, basically, right? So they're kind of a split group. So it's
And then there was an 18% or whatever.
and then so the other groups are the difference makers.
Right. I guess I'm just saying that the school board wants to do the right thing by the school district and by all the pro people for everybody in the district, but the most important group of people to get whatever we put out there passed is going to be the people that are out there that can influence voters for us in the right way.
Can we request some information? Because there's some stuff I would like to know. I don't have it all figured out exactly right now, but kind of bringing up that only 1% of the survey people are 18 to 25. How many 18 to 25-year-olds are there compared to the purple people? Stuff like that.
That wouldn't be information that we would provide. We provide information on who did the survey, but I'll be honest, we're not gonna go through and search the Dane County land records to find out how many people are.
Although we might have an idea though, Jordan, right? Because we did the population study, and I remember at the time we had the population study done, Mesa was doing some surveying for senior citizens about their needs in the community. You know, one of the things that struck me was the fact that so many of them were getting to the point in their lives where they couldn't take care of their home anymore, and they needed to perhaps go to a senior assisted living or senior apartment living. And so, you know, I think getting back to that though, that was really enlightening to me, because part of that whole thing was our population study kind of delineated what makes up the population in our school district. Am I right?
Yes, this is,
have you got that?
the population study is actually linked on the district website under facility planning. So this is from 2018.
So there may be a quick light, and there might be a quick, at least idea. Of course, that was a couple of years ago. We had to project out a little bit.
So I actually have it right here.
So I know Emma wants.
Page 14.
I know Emma wants to say something real quick, and then
Yeah, I just have a question regarding the referendum in general. This might be a dumb question, I'm sorry, but I'm genuinely asking, would there be any harm really in going big at first, and then if it doesn't happen, just trying again with less money? Like, I'm genuinely asking if there's harm in that.
Okay, so I guess I can
That's not a
probably.
dumb question.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
very valid. We
Probably
actually
answer
asked
that.
that already.
Yeah.
So part of our whole process has been to try to get this on the same ballot as the presidential campaign, because it is more likely to pass. And and that's what we're really hoping for. Now, there is always that danger that it doesn't pass, then we can bring it back, but there's also rules in place that don't allow you to just be able to do that right away. Jordan, you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can do it. And then if it doesn't pass the second time, then you have to wait even longer. And so, and you guys have to remember too, we're talking about a building referendum, we're gonna run back into an operational referendum coming up if we don't do something. And so that's gonna happen in a couple more years. So we have to think about all of that. Before anybody else says or raises their hand, I just wanted to real quick touch base on what our timeline looks like, so you guys can kind of understand the same kind of things that we're thinking about as far as when do we have to know what we're gonna say, when do we have to know what we're gonna put on a ballot if we're gonna do it. And so Jordan, can you just real quick refresh people on the dates?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
August, November.
Well, we have until August 25th, that's our deadline final day to know, or to have something on the ballot, a question, but we have to decide before that exactly what wording we're going to use.
So a resolution needs to be adopted by August 25th of 2020. That's based on statute to have something on the ballot for November 3rd. So most of you probably saw, if you weren't on one of them, you saw the video online from the listening sessions. I mean, yeah, the short term is the next month, basically. The board needs to
Number of board meetings.
have discussions. There's 2 formal scheduled meetings in July. The 13th and the 27th come to mind off the top of my head without a calendar.
Yep.
So yes, between those 2 formal meetings, perhaps a workshop that we've talked about scheduling as well to just kind of talk more deeply as a school board about it. But yeah, ideally what happen is that they would have a draft resolution for the end of July, because that then gives people a chance to kind of react and to come out, and ultimately that gives them a month to decide, is it the right time, is this the right language, is this something that can go? Because yes, the 25th of August is that's a hard deadline. So what happens before then is, I think, kind of under that parameters. To your question though, yeah, it's actually, if you go to the website under facility planning, there's a population study that Madison did for us, and they have the data, so no one has to look it up. And this is from 2010, but I know the population hasn't changed much here since 2010. The largest age groups as of 2010, 45 to 49, 50 to 54, 55 to 59 were the 3 largest groups of population in the Wisconsin Heights School District, for what it's worth.
And those are the purple people I think we're talking about now.
But you know what, those purple people had kids in this district too, and we can't forget that they also stayed for a reason. They believe in this area. So we can't automatically assume that they're naysayers or not, right? Like,
And if you give them a cultural center, you give them a place to see culture. I mean,
Yes.
that was a big
That's
thing.
the
So you don't have to tell me on that.
no, right, no, I'd rather see the cornet, or the Iron Horse Cornettian in an auditorium than in the gymnasium on Veterans Day, right? Like, all those things that we do. And, you know, as he was saying earlier, Mr. Schaefer, yeah, I'm not looking for a River Arts Center, we don't have Culver's in our back pocket, but we do have ETC, for God's sakes, and like, there's a relationship that can happen there, and the revenue that you can bring in once you have it. Wisconsin Heights players can pay rent to use a facility, right? Everybody can pay rent to use it. And the greatest part, working at Bridges Elementary in Sauk, is we can take our whole school to the River Arts Center and watch a movie on the big screen for a school reward. There's things then, there's just so many more options to do with all of the students, not just the drama kids, all the kids.
I think it's exciting too, though, that we got to this point. So I do appreciate the board and also Jordan leading some of those discussions a couple years ago. I think it started to get us to the point, so that's awesome. And it feels like everybody's all about the yes vote for a referendum. At least here, there's purple people that'll come out of nowhere that'll say no, so that is something to be cautious of. But it sure feels like a yes, a no, or a yes and vote of some sort is a possibility for sure, a big desire of the people that came here, and I gotta believe somebody is smart enough to figure out how to work that out so that it's clear and legible when you're going into the voting booth, because people usually stink at those, but I bet we could do that.
Hi, my name is Megan and I have 3 kids, and I just want to point out that I'm a purple people, and that I'm a purple people because I don't have school-age children, I have younger children. And so as you're considering an auditorium or things, I know you have a lot on your plate, you have a lot to balance, I know you're not anti-auditorium, but please also consider the future Wisconsin Heights families as well, as they're going to eventually want to use those facilities. There has been a lot of changes since 2010, I haven't been here. Yeah, there are a lot of.
All right, Mr. G.
Hi, I'm Mr. G. I'm going to college next year for film and television production. And in my time here at high school, I've only taken 2 theater classes. One was in middle school, one we offered that. A photography class, if that counts towards film and camera usage, and English class, which could help with writing and learning stuff like that. But our school doesn't really have much to offer for theater-wise. The only reason I could take a theater class was because, thankfully, Ms. Tossel helped set me up with an online course. But a whole third of that class was about how theater and film and arts like that can help the community. And obviously, we don't have time to go over 2 months worth of learning I did at this meeting. But there were many points about how purple people, normal people, I shouldn't say that, they're normal people. How in the entire community, no matter what part you are, is impacted and benefited from theater and stuff like that. And obviously the auditorium wouldn't only be for theater, but it's a great help to the community and can bring in revenue from one way or another, and just secondary streams of revenue by people being in the area due to performances and stuff like that. It could be a huge help to us. Yeah.
Build culture.
I want to echo what Andy had said. I don't envy any of you in the position you're in right now. It's a crappy time for this. Thank you for all you've done and are continuing to do on the school board. What you had brought up with SAWC, we are at a disadvantage. I mean, SAWC has considerably more businesses to help absorb some of that and provide some of that tax base. The Heights School District is primarily farms and homes. So the individual bears the brunt of that tax burden. But to the same point that you had just made too, in the past 2 months, I've had 3 coworkers who are recently married or are going to be married who have asked me about homes for sale in this area. 2 of them have actually come out and toured some of the homes that are for sale one in our subdivision and also another one in Mazo. They're interested about that, and that seems to be what I'm seeing here happening in Heights with some of the developments and the new homes that are starting to go up, and the slow development of the housing, and sort of that nudge in that direction to continue to grow, is what happened to Hortonville about 2 decades ago. Hortonville is much like Heights was in the relative area of Appleton and the Fox cities to that. It became attractive as almost like a bedroom community. But the population growth there fueled the business growth, which fueled the tax base, which allowed them to build, I think they built a added on to their high school, and 2 years later, they built a brand new high school because it was full. Like, doubled the kids in their classes. It was just huge, the way that that school district grew. We can only hope to be that lucky, but even if we're a fraction of that, you know, there is interest out towards Cross Plains and the Heights area. And when we first looked, we looked at, you know, the Cross Plains area, but it's just enough for people that live in Madison or work in Madison and want to live outside of the delusion zone of Madison, like many of us do that are out here, is that extra 5 minutes really is nothing. And you gain so much more versus the huge school district of Middleton versus what we have here. And the quality of teachers is, as has been mentioned many times, second to none. I would put Lyden's wife up against my choir my drama and director any day. I think they would get along famously. So, well, the point being that we have, you know, we've seen a lot of great things happening in the school district, and we want to continue to see them happening, and you guys have all been part of that, and thank you for that.
Appreciate that. Do any of the board members have anything?
I mean, I think I just thank you all for coming, because certainly seeing a motivated and passionate group kind of revitalizes our job in this, and realizing, you know, we don't always get interaction, and even through the listening sessions and the survey, I mean, those aren't tangible kind of conversations that you have with people, realizing that there is, you know, motivation and passion for what we're doing here. And so I just thank you, especially for the students. It's not easy to come, but it certainly makes our job not necessarily easier, but when I think about doing the best I can, it's really because we get all the perspectives, and the more perspectives and the more information really allows us to do our job better. So thank you for coming.
It helps to put a face to the information. Yes, I agree with the thank you.
Yeah, I guess I would just say, please don't get frustrated with us, because I guess in the next few weeks, we're going to really be promoting the referendum, but our focus is going to be on our most basic needs first, which is going to be getting the elementary schools improved. And so if you feel like the information we're putting out is not focused enough about the Performance Arts Center, that's just because we're focusing on the most basic needs first. And if we put something about the Performance Arts Center on there, that would be kind of, if you could say, gravy on top of everything else. So
The only reason I get frustrated is because I view it as the most basic need.
I really appreciate you guys coming out, especially the recent grads or the current students. It's like your children's moment where you're Kevin Bacon in front of the town council. But I saw Hello Dolly last year, so I was very impressed by you guys, the small stage. And so I totally, as I may only be on for a year, who knows, I'm a substitute Adam.
No, make sure you vote for back.
I'm very pro artist, you don't have to sell me on that. We're just trying to do the best we can with parsing this out the way that we feel like it's gonna be successful. But I guess I'm speaking for myself in this. If I would go out on a limb for including the auditorium in some form on however we place this out, I would also want a good faith effort of recent graduates that are now 18, canvassing all of their friends that are gonna come back and put absentee votes back home, and all of those kind of things that need to happen for that to be successful. That's the kind of stuff that if we go out on a limb on some of this, that if we want it to pass, that's the stuff that's gonna happen.
yeah, because August 25th, we'll decide, and if you see that there's something on there that mentions auditorium, we have from August 25th until the election to do whatever we can to promote the heck out of it so it passes.
I think that might be the biggest takeaway tonight is getting the young votes.
So James, I am a little, what you just said, that you would be trying to get our basic needs first, I think that could shoot us in the foot. I think that your message though, if you're the first person to put the message, it's really important that your message is, these are all important basic needs. If you frame it as gravy right away to people, then they're gonna say, well, then we don't need that, we really don't. I think that it's really important that if our intention is to get all the things for all the kids, then we have to say right from square one, all of these things are all of the things the kids need. If your initial
I agree with you.
message.
Those are the dilemmas that we deal with too.
Well, so I'm just saying, my 2 cents would be, don't start right away with already framing it as like the frosting.
That's fair.
Okay.
And I will say that is, those wordsmithing things is something why we've hired additional people to help us. We don't have the best words to say, and I think that will help us as we go, and especially as we start writing the questions, having those people at our, in our back pocket is really what's gonna help us make sure that we get the best results.
One of the variations.
Very shyly. Hiring consultants. Okay, this is my takeaway. Being a parent, especially with kids with special needs, and being an advocate that talks professional opinions, because you have to, because they're motivated by money. So I just say to you guys, don't trust yourselves as to what you think is best for the community. And if the higher professionals have an opinion that deep down you feel in disagreements with, please hide it. That's basically what I'm asking.
There is a little bit of merit to the way that SOC worded theirs too, as a dig once for everything, because there is a significant cost anytime you add, just for the construction company to get their equipment and their people out there, is a huge part of the construction cost of any project, no matter how big or small. That logistics of getting everything out there and the materials out there and the equipment is huge. So doing it all at once can itself just be a huge savings.
When I'm trying to get a big job, I say buying in bulk.
Yeah. So we had realized that with the previous church that we had built when we were in Oshkosh, there was a number of options on the table similarly, and they said, look, if we do it all at once, this is the cost, but this is how much it costs just to get them out here again, to even start digging the foundations to put, the canopy in. They're like, oh, put the foundations in now then.
Good song.
So, just another little bit of fun.
All right, well, I guess I did realize we also do have the listening session feedback. We didn't hear them up yet, so
Okay.
so let's talk about that.
Yeah, so actually, I did connect Doreen and help facilitate the conversation, so I do have Doreen in the background here. Let me see if she's still there.
Here.
Been a good soldier, thanks Doreen.
Yeah, no, that's been a good conversation. I've been taking diligent notes.
I appreciate that. So anyways, I have Doreen on the background, like I said, help facilitate our conversations. She had provided an executive summary for the board, which was attached for public view as well. I guess, Doreen, do you want to kind of go through that document for the board, or how do you want to handle kind of discussing that executive summary?
Yes, I realize there's people in the audience as well, so hello everybody. I'll just give some comments and then go through the executive summary so everybody has the same information. So first, I have my comments written out, and then after listening, I'm not sure I should say it, but I do want to emphasize that the survey was more comprehensive than the listening sessions, and that it reached more people as the number was brought up, 729 compared to look at our numbers here. We had staff at 59 and community participants at 46. So the community survey is a set of data that, as we've just listened, will be considered as part of all the data that you consider. I think another point that was made that I was going to make is that it will be the board's job as it contemplates the financial information, not only the impact on taxpayers, but the financial impact on the district, the facilities needs, your enrollment study, what you learn through your future search priorities, and the community input that you're gathering from the survey and listening. So that's a really big job that the board has in front of them. I also want to make a point about the community conversations. They were all virtual, and that was because of our current pandemic. And I thought that as a result of that, I thought we had a really good turnout. We had a short period of time where we turned it around, and I thought we had a really good turnout for that. So kudos to you for being courageous enough to go out there and ask questions at a time where we couldn't do it face-to-face. So we did hear, so I want to talk really about, if you go up, about the purpose. When we do these kind of sessions, we're really trying to first want to present a short introduction to everybody about the current facilities work. And I think as a result of that, many of your audience members perhaps, but also members of your public became more aware of where you're at in the process. And so that's a really good outcome of this kind of work. A second purpose was to really ask the participants, did we present the information in a way that they could understand, and was there more information that they needed? And we really limited our purpose to that because we, as a consultant, I want to provide to the board as much information as we possibly can as they make decisions about the final proposal. So, for example, we discovered some recurring questions, right? And we want to know that as you as a board formulate your final solution to your facilities needs, that you are addressing not only the concerns, but the questions that people have. So in one of the outcomes of this was to learn about what are some of the recurring questions that your community had about the current facilities information. And again, you don't have a proposal yet. I think that's really important to keep in mind. And so we were asked to investigate the elementary wing compared to the update the elementary schools, as well as the middle and high school. The auditorium organically grew out of that conversation. We did not particularly address the auditorium in the conversations. I think it's really important to state that the benefit of sessions like this is to illuminate topics that might be concerning to citizens as they try to understand what the facilities needs are, and to understand that before you roll out a proposal. So again, kudos to the district for caring enough to ask before you're coming forward with a proposal. And ultimately, my recommendation to you is to be respectful of the input that's received, both from the broad survey, the financial impact, all of the places that you gathered information, because it's all valid and part of your decision-making process. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately going to be an exercise of weighing priorities and how can you find the solution that will get the most community support. I think that's ultimately what you're looking for, to address the facilities needs that face the district and gets community support. So I'm going to go through some of those recurring questions now. So if you could just scroll up a little bit, I could use that as a guide. So here simply these were some of the recurring questions, and I bring them to the board's and administration's attention only so that as you contemplate the next month or two, what is the final proposal, that we address these questions, because this is what your community was asking. So they were asking about the vacant buildings. If you were to go to the elementary wing, and we talked about that, and we talked about that Jordan and the board are going to engage in earnest conversations with the village officials. They asked what will be those operational savings, knowing that your district has and will have need for operational referendum in the future. This is one of the ways that they thought the elementary wing could help address some of those operational needs. So the question is, what are going to be some of those savings? And in particular, there was a question about busing. So again, remember, the purpose was to learn what people are thinking about, and then not we have the answers right away, but give us time to investigate those. And so investigating things like busing is something that came up. Investigating what can we do about staff reductions. And what we were talking about is, you know, if you have a very solid plan, then you can look at your staffing from a very strategic approach and use that through resignations and retirement. So all that, those kinds of things were talked about across all the groups, not one group in particular. Then what are the advantages of a one-campus district? People did want to know more about the rationale and how that would better serve your students. We had particular community conversations with staff as the main or only participants. And as I would expect, because they're the boots on the ground, they're the people who are delivering the educational program, they did have some specific questions about the design. So during the presentation, performance services staff did show preliminary concepts, and some of their design concerns came out. And an important one, that how will staff be tapped for input when the final plans are developed? And again, the discussion was there certainly needed to be staff input in order for the staff's voice to be heard, and that was definitely part of the process. Should a referendum be approved by the voters? So if you could just go down a little bit more, I think we just have, we do have a few more. How will the safety be addressed? Of course, that was brought up, and that's something already being worked on by performance services, but again, something that we want to make sure you're looking at when you look at your final proposal. They questioned, how do we know that the referendum price put forward in the ballot question is actually the cost? And part of the value of a listening session like this is when you have the answer, you should give it, and we do know that the board may only borrow what it specifically asks for in a resolution, so we were able to answer that community member's question. What is done if the money, you know, if the vacant buildings are sold, what would be done with the money? Again, we don't have an answer for that, but that's something for the board to contemplate and think about. Will local labor be used? Will it be competitively bid? Will it be competitively bid? The answer is yes, and so if it's open to bid, there'll be local labor to have an opportunity. And then again, back to the benefits. What's the benefit of the one campus district? And some of the participants were in favor of it and told us what the benefits that they saw, and particularly the staff, understanding that it would reduce travel and that it would help with scheduling and transportation and all of those things. And then there were concerns about a one-campus district, and we wanted to know what people were thinking about. And they were thinking about the vacated buildings, the site safety, and blending younger students with older students. And there's answers for all of those, but also there's continued work that needs to be done before your proposal is finalized. And then lastly, we asked, would they be in favor of adding the middle school, high school repairs in the referendum proposal? And there was generally, for the folks who participated, that these repairs were needed. And there's the discussion by the administrators on the school, on the call, about how that affects the cost to the taxpayers. So you saw that data earlier. There were at least 3 comments that organically arose about the auditorium, and tonight there were many more. So the auditorium, in my opinion, has raised itself as an issue for continued discussion amongst the board. So that's my executive summary, and I apologize, you probably hear my little dog barking in the background, and I apologize for that. And that is the conclusion of my comments, unless there are questions.
Board members, any questions for Doreen?
Oh, thank you for being patient.
Yes, thank you.
They said thank you for being patient.
Yeah, my dog's not being patient right now.
It's kind of like children. When they need something, they let you know. Anything else, Doreen, I guess just relative to the executive summary? I guess the other piece that we had talked about wanting to at least bring up, and I'm assuming these questions here or statements to a certain extent would be utilized for some of the FAQ type things, and then documents and things we provide for the community as a whole as we potentially move forward with the planning process. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, thank you, Jordan. Yes, so we present, I think this is a wonderful example of how these questions generated can help other people become informed. So yes, as we develop more information, I'll start working on getting the questions answered in a way that most people would feel comfortable understanding, easy to understand language, and then we can put them on the website so that they would be there for everybody to view. And then if additional questions start coming up, say we do have an email address set up already to accept questions, so Jordan, I know you've been monitoring that. If more questions come in, of course, we can then investigate the answers and get those out there. So it really then provides that kind of back and forth information that the people need in order to make an informed decision. And that would be my goal, to keep that information flowing.
I'm seeing nods, eye contact. Appreciate the document, how you kind of pulled it together for us. Appreciate how you were a part of that, because that was once again a 5-hour undertaking for you as well. So thank you for being a part of that as well.
Yeah, good. I think it went well. I hope everybody's satisfied. It's just information as we talked about it earlier.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We're, I think, going to move on to our next talking point on this one, so we'll be in touch. Thanks, Doreen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, any discussion on this?
So then the other piece to that, just because there's a lot going through everyone's head, the other piece we had talked about more specific to this is in early July, getting together for a workshop session. And roll up your sleeves and have open dialogue and talk and, yes, kind of figure out what it is that you're feeling in your land. And so I shared with you a draft agenda for the board workshop. I guess what I would ask of you is some feedback, clarifications, things that you think need to be included in that. I would say the most key piece right now relative to that is kind of like putting together a good lesson plan for class. You have your essential standards or your I can statements, or we will. So our essential standards are, are we going to be able to come to a consensus that we're moving forward with something? If we are moving forward with something, what are those some things feeling like they're going to be? What projects should be included, and then that discussion format will then lend itself to our July 13th regular board meeting to have that conversation in a format similar to this again, and to kind of share where that work is at and where people are feeling things are starting to fit. So I guess if you have any feedback relative to that draft for that workshop session, please share that with me as you're able, and we'll solidify it leading up to that night, and we'll go from there.
I'm sure by that time they'll have more clarification from Quarles and Brady as well, right?
Front of my board agenda, I always like to write my to-do list. My to-do list includes referendum language clarification with Quarles and Brady.
Nice.
What does the second question look like? Can it be connected to the first question? So yes, I will have that information.
All right, well, I know tonight kind of turned into more of a listening / participation session, but guys, we really appreciate all of your input. And I mean, without you guys spending your own personal time coming here and talking to us face to face, we wouldn't have your information, so we do appreciate that. All right, so we'll move on to item agenda number 9 and 9.1, 9.2, which is set committee board meeting dates as needed, future meeting dates. We just talked about
I
that.
think we just
right?
talked about that, we're good to go, we've got our
Anybody
dates.
have anything else? All right, well then, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Yvette?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Thank you guys all for coming, we do appreciate it.